Welcome back. You're watching One on One. We're talking with author and women's activist Zainab Salbi. Zainab, what was your reaction when you saw Saddam Hussein captured?
I was very happy. As someone who works with wars and with women survivors of wars, I am adamantly against wars. And I just think the wars are not the answer. It's a very expensive way of solving issues, and it's much cheaper to build peace, and it's much more sustainable to have the people have ownership of change. Having said that, when Saddam was captured, it was one of the happiest days in my life. I never thought that this day would come. And it's an inconsistent feeling, being against the war, but being happy that Saddam was captured. That's life.
What would you feel is an appropriate punishment for him, assuming he's found guilty of charges?
Not executions, definitely. I'm against execution for many reasons, but predominantly because I do not want us as Iraqis to repeat the same behavior patterns that he did to us. He executed people on the spot. He executed people without judicial process or due process. We want to snap out of this. We do not want to repeat what he has done. He should be life imprisonment. My ideal scenario is, my fantasy is to have him be in a glass cage where he can listen to people telling him what they've gone through with his violence and injustice, but not be able to speak back to them. That's my fantasy.
Your book on your life is called Between Two Worlds, and in it you're in a unique perspective, because one world obviously is the Arab world in Iraq, the other is the USA. So I wonder, living in the USA, how do you regard the American viewpoint of Iraq? What's misunderstood? What's really not, fully absorbed here?
Well, the first thing is this black and white perspectives on Iraqis. I think the first thing Americans did when they went to Iraq is categorize people. Are you Sunni? Are you Shia? Are you Kurd? And if you're a Christian, are you Armenian? Are you Catholic? Are you Orthodox? And that was not only one of the biggest mistakes, in my opinion. That was not reflective and showed a lack of understanding of that culture. We talk about our differences in our kitchen table. We never talk about our differences in the meeting rooms. We talk whether we are Sunni or Shias or Kurd in the kitchen table, inside our family living room, but never in the offices and never in our colleagues, And to transform this very private discussion into a very public discussion, frankly, in my opinion, is no different than what the Belgians did when they went to Rwanda and started categorizing people as Hutu or Tutsi based on how their nose was shaped or how their features were shaped.
Let me ask you, you've had quite an adventure in your life. What do you feel are the defining moments in your life?
Different ways. Over the years, I learned that, very personally speaking, my most unfortunate moments led to my most fortunate moments. My most unfortunate moments were the day we had to be involved with Saddam Hussein as a social setting, the day that I got married to an abusive husband, and I have to say that since then I'm married to the love of my life, so there are good men out there, the day that my mother died, all of these very particular days that really made me who I am, the person that I am. Professionally, was meeting a woman called Aisha in Bosnia, and she was imprisoned in a rape camp for 9 months. And she was released when she was 8 months pregnant. She could not locate her husband and 2 sons, and 2 children rather, and she was utterly devastated when I met her. And that was a turning point about being angry at injustice, and that's the thing that keeps me going. I'm really angry at injustice.
What do you see as the most challenging things you've had to face in your life then?
On a personal level, this is very personal actually. The challenge is, you go through a lot of challenges, not having money, having abusive marriage, all of these things. That's one thing that you deal with it. On a personal level, I think it is how to accept receiving as much as accept giving. I think I was taught to value only the giving part and not the receiving part. How to take care of myself as much as I want to take care of others. How to show my love as much as I want to show my love to others. How to receive love rather. It's these very small things, like it's the biggest challenge for me is how to pay attention to the small things. It's easier to talk about the big things. It's much easier to talk about the very small things. Politically or professionally, the biggest challenge is really dealing with people's lack of interest about the injustice that is happening in the world.
You've obviously created a relationship with Saddam Hussein, not just because you actually had one, but because it's a part of your story and you're using your story to do positive things and so on. But isn't there a danger now that you've tied yourself to his name?
Well, that danger was always with me. I mean, that's the reason I decided at the end of the day, when I decided to write the book, was I need to take ownership of my fear. And I came to realize that fear, to a great extent, is an external thing that is imposed on us. But then there is a certain extent where we own that fear. And then we nurse it, and we feed it, and we embrace it because we are comfortable with it. That was definitely the case with me. I was so familiar with the fear that I had with Saddam that I was so afraid to mention his name in my own balcony in Washington, D.C. And so I needed to take ownership of my demons, because otherwise they were constantly with me and they were constantly controlling me. I constantly felt vulnerable.
Is it something you've been able to leave behind now? Have you reached that stage?
Absolutely. I mean, by getting it out in the book, in many ways I feel naked throughout the whole, to the whole world, and in many ways I feel an incredible sense of liberation. I am no longer afraid of that demon. And yes, will I ever be in danger? I mean, I traveled to war zones, so yes, that always comes to as part of the job. But I have taken control over my fear, and I'm really that sense of that freedom that you get by you no longer have that demon around you and controlling you is gone, and it's a very cathartic experience that I've been through writing the book.
Well, by the title of your book, Between Two Worlds, you are actually living in two worlds, essentially, culturally, as we've said. How do you relate to Iraq now? Is it still a place you call home?
There's definitely aspect of Iraq that is home. I mean, every time I smell Iraqi food, I immediately have a huge smile, or think of the Tigris, or see a palm tree that is a home for me. But over the years, I've also really come to love Bosnia as much as I love Iraq, as much as I love Congo, as much as I love Afghanistan. And I do have that sense of the love to these places, regardless of the national boundaries. Home for me, I think, is, like Prophet Muhammad said, is where you are heading, and definitely is where the heart is. Now I travel most of my life, and home is just where my loved ones are. So that's where home is.
So what are the next steps for you, professionally, personally, and so on?
Next step professionally is to really expand and to do more work with Women for Women. I think using a Rumi poem, one of my favorite poems actually, says, "Out beyond the worlds of right doings and wrongdoings, there is a field. I will meet you there." I actually humbly argue that in today's world, where we are, I think, in a world of war and peace, I do believe there is a field and women are meeting there. And what I am a witness to and have the privilege to witness is women saying, let's have a dialogue and bridges of discussions, different ways than war. And let's look at it of how we can actually help each other improve our lives and how can we have a discussion. I find it amazing that after September 11, for example, many of the wives who've lost their husbands at the towers came to us and said, I want to sponsor Afghan women. I don't support the war, and this is my way of communicating, this is my way of building peace in Afghanistan. So I do believe that there is an alternative that are done and are explored by women, and it's sort of it's an under-the-table alternative because it's not necessarily brought into the discussion tables yet. But I do believe eventually it will be at a point in which we can bring women at the negotiating tables and see women as an essential role in building strong countries and sustainable societies.
And personally, what things are there that you would like to do that you haven't managed to?
Having a child. I never wanted to have a child all my life. I was so petrified.
Because of your experience through your travels?
Because of my experience, because I was so afraid that I can't guarantee not hurting my child. And not hurting, not physical, that's never an issue, but emotional. I just could not. Because I felt so hurt by my own parents. And obviously since writing the book and coming to grip with my life, I come out of it much more sympathetic and much more respectful of my parents, and in a very humble way. And I pray not to be in their position. I pray not to be in a doorstep where Saddam Hussein or a horrible person is inside, and I am giving a choice between going in or leaving, and there is a risk with both. I sympathize with them much more. So, but right now, as I got it out, and as I am much more with peace with them, with me, I feel I want to experience life fully, and I think having a child is part of it.
You've written your story about your life and your life with Saddam Hussein, but how would you like to be remembered?
As someone who has not hurt anybody. It's a really hard thing. I get emotional talking about it because I don't know if it's actually possible. But I really try hard not to do it. That's all what I want to be remembered.
Zainab Salbi, thank you very much.
Welcome. Pleasure. Thank you.